We are happy to be here with some very familiar faces to recognize September as National Sickle Cell Awareness Month. We've done this proclamation. I've had the privilege of leading it a few times, and it's great to have Councilmember Albornoz, our chair of HHS, and Councilmember Sayles as partners in the effort. As many of you know, sickle cell disease is a lifelong illness. It can be diagnosed at birth, and it impacts more than 100,000 people in the United States, most of whom are Black or African American. Many people with sickle cell disease are also of Hispanic, Southern European, Middle Eastern, or Asian Indian descent. This disease can cause serious problems and severely impact life expectancy. And we have so many people, and you'll hear, and we have them behind us, many of them, who are working to create better outcomes for folks with this disease. And we often know that when you have a disease that affects that number of people, but it's in a targeted way, it's easy for it to be forgotten. And it's why it's really important that we lift up the work. We have with us today representatives from MCPS, the Department of Health and Human Services, the African American Health Program, the NAACP, the Sickle Cell Disease Association of America, and the Red Cross. Make sure to donate your blood, everybody, among so many others. We'll hear from some of them first, but I want to make two calls to action. I already did one, but I'm going to do it again. Donate blood. I have my card in my wallet in case I forget my number, particularly if you're African American. We did a thing a couple years ago, and they'll tag it as a special bag so that you can be checked and screened and potentially help save a life of someone or improve lives of someone who has sickle cell. Less than 10% of US citizens donate blood, less than 10%. But blood transfusions are one of the most critical treatments for sickle cell patients. They benefit from better from transfusions from people of the similar race, Black or African American. It makes a difference. But only 5% of all blood donors are Black. So we must increase those numbers. Second, get screened for the trait. Many people carry the trait and are not aware of it because it doesn't cause illness in them right away or at that point. It's important that every African American Black person gets screened so you can have the information and also go donate blood. So with that, I want to turn it over to first my colleague, Councilmember Sayles, and then Councilmember Albornoz.
So good morning, everyone, and thank you all for being here for this important occasion. In addition to the organizations and individuals that my colleague, Councilmember Jawando, mentioned, it's good to see my church family, Mount Calvary Baptist Church here represented, members of the Black Ministers Conference of Montgomery County, and also members of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Thank you. I'd also like to thank the many advocates that have joined us here today, not just those here, but those currently living with the disease. I also want to recognize our advocates fighting for much needed change and the family and friends of those living with sickle cell disease who are staunch supporters of their loved ones. Sickle cell disease is a genetic condition that affects the structure of hemoglobin, the protein in our red blood cells that carries oxygen. This genetic mutation leads to the formation of sickle-shaped red blood cells, which can cause blockages in blood vessels, severe pain, organ damage, exhaustion, and a host of other health complications. As the lead of reducing health disparities in our county with the Health and Human Services Committee, I hold sickle cell disease close to my heart. There's a clear disparity in which community is disproportionately affected by sickle cell disease, and that is our African American community. Thankfully, there are people on the ground working on closing this disparity, which Montgomery County can participate in. We can partner with health organizations, not just in the nonprofit sector, but also our partners in the private sector, working on improvements in healthcare for sickle cell disease, as well as early detection. We can follow the work of the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid services, who are developing a cell and gene therapy access model, which would help Medicaid beneficiaries gain access to potentially life-changing, high-cost specialty drugs. For illnesses like sickle cell disease, clinical trials are being held at NIH testing new drug therapies, as well as a plethora of other creative initiatives that I have yet to share. It is imperative that we continue to look for opportunities to improve the lives of those living with sickle cell disease in the county, to stay proactive and ahead of the curve versus reactive. Thank you again to all the groups that are here with us this Tuesday morning to discuss the importance of Sickle Cell Awareness Month and the work we have ahead of us. I'll turn things over to my council member and colleague and chair of the Health and Human Services Committee.
Well, good morning, good people. It is great to be with all of you this morning on this beautiful, bright, and blessed day. A little rainy, but that's all right. But to be standing in front of these beautiful, bright, and blessed people who are here to help ensure that we spread the critically important message of treatment and awareness. This is yet, unfortunately, another example of a disease that disproportionately impacts our Black and brown community, in this case, in particular, our Black community. Now, the good news is we are well poised here in Montgomery County with the infrastructure of community-based organizations, the African American Health Program, innovative initiatives such as the Black Physicians Network, and the incredible leadership of our Department of Health and Human Services to be at the forefront, not just within Montgomery County, but regionally and nationally, in educating our public about issues such as this. People should not have to suffer in the way that they do. And one thing that hasn't been mentioned, but is unfortunately a byproduct of this incredibly challenging disease, is that one of the pain management treatments is to prescribe opioids. And as we know, that can cause a whole nother cascading negative impact that spirals out of control and further destroys families. We can push back against this tide if we continue to work together and proactively educate our communities about these issues. We have to start with ourselves. I have to start in my own family. We have to start in all of our own families. But we will achieve a lot more together. Thank you all for being here this morning.
Thank you, Councilmember Albornoz. I want to bring up two speakers briefly, and then we'll read the proclamation. One is our very, very good friend and special guest, rather. She's a special friend, too. Ms. Janet Ricks, who was recognized just a few days ago as one of the oldest living people, and doesn't look her age. Longest living people with sickle cell disease in the country, Ms. Janet Ricks. So let's give her a warm round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you, President Glass. Thank you, Councilmembers Albornoz, Jawando, and Sayles for having me here this morning. My husband and I, who is my caretaker, Vernon, just came back from California. California found out about me through this county council presentation last year. They have every year and have for 17 years presented a sickle cell summit in their chambers, and there in a local hotel, we had a wonderful presentation from doctors around the country. It was Cayenne Wellness Center who did this. They had around the room pictures of doctors and physicians from around the who were involved in sickle cell care for us. I am a sickle cell patient. Sickle cell beta thalassemia is the proper name for what I have. and I am proud to be here. Dr. Marilyn Gaston, who is local right here in Montgomery County, involved me in this program. And it was Dr. Carolyn Rowley, who's in this book, who heads the program that did this summit in California. We were glad to be there. I know very little about sickle cell. My sister died from sickle cell 2 weeks before her 60th birthday. My aunt died from sickle cell when she was 42 years old, which is the average age of sickle cell patients. It is very, very painful when one has a crisis. It's not something that we want to deal with, but we have to deal with. Dr. Gaskin, who I mentioned, was involved in having all of our babies tested at infancy. Until these recent years, that wasn't happening. And that needs to happen so that people know if they have sickle cell or if they have the trait. While I was at the summit, I learned of this book, Hope and Destiny. A young lady helped me to order it from Amazon, and it came yesterday. I've not had a chance to read it, but I did have a chance to look through it. If you have sickle cell or sickle cell trait, please get this book. It tells you an awful lot about it, what to do with your child if you have one who's involved. It tells you why you have what you have, and it's very, very interesting. It's easy reading, and it's something that we need to keep in our belongings. I am so glad that I am able to speak to you now, and I don't speak often because my voice is high and it goes up even higher on a microphone. But I wouldn't sit down without saying to you, while we were there in California, all 5 of us who were in front of the audience were called forward, and they crowned us. And this is what they crowned me with. It's an African coffee. Sickle cell originated in Africa, and as was said earlier, a lot of African Americans suffer from sickle cell. But I was surprised even to see in here Chinese, Indian, Asian Indians, many Latinos. We all are involved. So it's something that we should know about and try our best to spread the word and do something very positive about it. I am 81 years old. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. The lady next to me at the summit was 83, so she beat me out. And thank you again for having me.
As I said, you don't look it, but we're so happy that you got celebrated. And then briefly, we'll hear from Kurt Luthi, who's the Executive Director of the American Red Cross in Howard, Frederick, and Montgomery counties. And then we'll read the proclamation. Hey, Kurt.
It is our honor and privilege to stand among such distinguished and staunch supporters of this particular cause and this particular topic. We at the Red Cross do our part through hosting blood drives. And so you've already heard the call to come and donate your blood, and I would just echo that call. One of the most impactful things that I ever saw was touring our blood processing facility, and we saw an anonymous list of people who were getting blood transfusions, and they were sickle cell patients. And I saw that almost the full body's blood volume was being transfused to address one of the pain crises. And one of the amazing things that I thought is it took up to 10 people to donate that blood to help that one person. And what a beautiful picture of what our community is called to do, the multitudes of us helping those that are in need. And so we are proud to stand here with our other advocates and people who are engaged in this particular difficulty, and we call on everybody in Montgomery, Howard, and Frederick, and around the country to participate in donating blood and spreading the word. So thank you.
Before we read the proclamation, I just quickly wanted to invite Minister Yolanda Lewis to speak as the mother of children who have sickle cell disease. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much, council members, Sayles, Albornoz, and Jawando. Thank you so much for having us here today. Is that better? Okay. As was mentioned by Councilmember Sayles, I am Reverend Yolanda Lewis, a minister, member of Montgomery County Black Ministers Conference, and I stand here today representing my handsome young man over here living with sickle cell disease, SS. And it's because of everything that was mentioned here today that he's standing with us today. The first week of school he missed because he was in pain crisis. But what brought him around was not the medicines, it was a blood transfusion. So if you are able to donate, please donate. It really does save lives. And we're just so thankful that this is the first step to many great steps coming ahead. So thank you all so much for acknowledging and recognizing sickle cell disease in Montgomery County. It's over. I mean, it's well needed. Thank you.
He's like, no, absolutely not. All right, here we go. Whereas sickle cell disease is an inherited disorder in which red blood cells may become sickle-shaped and harden. It is not contagious, and there is no universal cure. And
Whereas September is National Sickle Cell Awareness Month, a time to raise attention for the disease. This year's theme is Sickle Cell Matters. And
Whereas approximately 1 in 13 African Americans carry the sickle cell trait, because the trait usually does not cause illness, many people do not know that they have it. And
whereas Latinos have the second most common incidence of SCD in the U.S., however, people of many ethnic backgrounds have the disease. And
this feels like the Temptations. And whereas in the U.S., approximately 2,000 babies are born with SCD annually and are diagnosed at birth in the U.S. For a baby to be born with SCD, both parents must carry a sickle cell trait or genes for another hemoglobin like HBC, HBE, or beta thalassemia. And whereas
whereas sickle cell disease is a global health problem involving significant health disparities, and there must be collaboration between local, state, and federal governments to raise awareness and ensure that treatments and cures for it are easily accessible to all.
now therefore be it resolved that the County Council of Montgomery County, Maryland hereby declares September as Sickle Cell Awareness Month. And be it further resolved that the Montgomery County residents of African American and Latino descent should be tested if they don't know their status, and all residents should advocate for better treatment, education, and research of this disease. Presented on this day, the 26th of September in the year 2023, signed by myself, Councilmember Sayles, Councilmember Albornoz, Council President Glass, on behalf of the entire council. Thank you, everybody.